Thank you guys both for, I guess, all four of you, five of you ladies for coming today. Since we kind of have a lot of information to cover in just an hour, so I don't want to have enough time for questions. But my name's Sally Kotanek, if you haven't seen me before. I'm a registered dietitian with Cerner, and I'm here today to talk to you about food labels, what they look like, how to read them, some key things to look for, and then we're going to talk about activity and how to set some goals, you know, what the national recommendations are for physical activity, and then how to really attack it and set some really achievable goals, you know, if that's something that you struggle with, how to set some goals. So just what we're going to talk about today, we're going to look at what really does influence our food choices. For a lot of us, it's not really what's in the food, it's what we see on the front of the package, believe it or not. So we'll look at some of those. Like I said, we're going to talk about the food label, what it looks like, how to read it, some key things to look at, and then the physical activity goals. So what really does influence what we buy in the grocery store? For some of us, it's what we're hungry for. How many of you have ever been to the grocery store on an empty stomach? And you get home $200 later and you have nothing to make for dinner. I've been there. It's really challenging to find good quality food or choose good quality food when you're starving. So that's one thing that will influence what we choose to eat. Or if you've ever, say, missed a meal, maybe not intentionally, but say you're really busy at work and you don't have time to eat lunch, and then you get to middle of the afternoon, you just want to eat whatever you can find. Or when you get home from work and you're famished, it's like open the pantry, first thing that you see. So hunger really plays a big factor in what we choose to eat. Advertising is another key thing. Commercials, magazines, newspapers, even ads in the grocery flyer. You know, some people will buy things just because they're on sale. You know, I can get a good deal on it, so I'm going to buy it. It might not necessarily be a healthy food or, you know, something that fits into your meal plan or your diet or whatever you're trying to accomplish with your health, but we buy it because it's a good deal. Exposure to food, so if you smell something or if you see something, you know, how many times do you walk by the cafeteria before lunch and you're like, ooh, I'm getting hungry, you know, you smell food, so that's kind of influencing what you're going to choose to eat. Size and shape of the container, variety, portion size, location of food in the store. So if you're shopping and you see things at eye level, sometimes that makes it easier to just choose those because you don't have to tiptoe, you know, up at the top and reach it or squat way down at the bottom, you know, to get what you are looking for down there. Grocery stores are very strategic in how they position food in stores. If you ever walk down the cereal aisle, pay attention to what cereals fall where. The ones on the very top are the super nutritious cereals. The wheat brand, the, you know, oat cereal, whatever it is, you know, the high fiber, the stuff that probably little kids aren't going to want to eat. But down about this high, right about a child or a toddler's height, is the Trix and the Fruit Loops and the Lucky Charms, you know, all that stuff that appeals to them. So if you take your child grocery shopping, you know, they can walk, they're going to want to grab all those things that are at that eye level. Front of the label, buzzwords are a key factor. Buzzwords are things like high in protein, great source of fiber, Greek yogurt, that's kind of a popular buzzword right now. But all of those things kind of impact our food choices too. And then, like I said, shopping hungry is another big component of what influences your food. But really, how do we know what is truly in the food that we're buying? You know, the front of the label is not going to tell you everything. It might give you some key things that are important to you. You know, if you're trying to eat more protein, you're going to want to buy a cereal that on the front it says, you know, great source of protein. If you're trying to get more calcium, you'll want to find those foods that on the front of the label says great source of calcium. But if you're thinking about other components of your meal plan, you know, if it's fiber or if it's vitamin C or, you know, carbohydrates, you're going to want to flip it over and look at the label. You know, because this is truly where you're going to find the information about what is in that food product. The FDA is the governing body that manages all of the food labels. They manage what is in the food label, health claims, and then nutrient content claims. So we're going to talk about each one of those a little bit more. So the picture here is just some examples of some of those buzzwords that I was talking about. You know, these Nature Valley granola bars that say protein in big bold letters on the front. You know, the cereals that say whole grain at the top. You know, the peanut butter down there that says omega-3. You know, those are all like keywords that you can look for, but then you got to flip it over to further investigate. So like I said, the FDA is in charge of the food labeling system. It was made a law back in 1990 that all food manufacturers put the nutritional information on food. It's required for most all prepared foods, so anything that's been even somewhat processed. Conventional foods like fruits and vegetables, fish, typically things that don't have added ingredients, it's not required for those foods. But some products will. I know, you know, like a bag of carrots, for instance, typically has a food label on it. The FDA also regulates health claims, and these are anything that tie a specific nutrient to some health outcome. So the Cheerios box is, you know, indicating that Cheerios, because it's a good source of whole grains, it may help reduce cholesterol. Now, it's not promising anything, it's just saying that you could get this benefit from eating this food. You know, oatmeal. Soluble fiber from oatmeal may reduce your risk of heart disease. So it's any claim that has been linked through some scientific study that can benefit your health. Yogurt, you know, yogurt because of the calcium may decrease your risk of osteoporosis. And then nutrient content claims are things like, you know, low fat, low sugar, anything where a nutrient in the food has been altered. You know, and there's set guidelines around what it can mean. So those are just a couple examples that I listed up there. You know, if something is technically low fat, it has to have 3 grams or less of total fat, or no more than 30% of the calories coming from fat. So those are just some different examples, and the FDA regulates all of those. Recently this year, I don't know how many people heard, but with Michelle Obama and some of her activity around changing the school nutrition program and just some of her advocacy around just the health of our country, she was proposing some changes be made to the food label because, I mean, if you think 1990, I mean, that was several years ago that the first food label came out, and it's been the same ever since. You think our health, our health of our population, but also just kind of what's important to us has changed since then? It definitely has. And one key thing that I think is really interesting is that serving sizes listed on any container technically is not what you should be eating. They deem that based on what most people actually eat. So if you think about some serving sizes, I mean, how much they've changed, they don't really reflect what we're currently eating anymore. So that's one big change that was proposed. A lot of these changes are still being discussed, you know, nothing's been set in stone yet. But another thing that they wanted to do was adjust the calories, make it bigger and in bold letters so people saw it first and foremost. And then another line that was added, or that they want to add, is using the added sugars. Because most foods you look at will say just total sugar. Well, sugar occurs naturally in a lot of foods. Milk is a good example. You know, you don't think of it as a high sugar food, but it does naturally contain a sugar. So they want to help people differentiate between what's naturally occurring versus what's added, you know, because that's becoming more important to our overall health. So I just kind of wanted to show you a little bit what the portion sizes look like now versus, you know, over 20 years ago, back when the food label first came out. So like a pint of ice cream typically is 4 servings, or it says that it's 4 servings, right? Not many people actually just eat a half a cup of ice cream. So now they're wanting it to say 2 servings. So people would see that and think, oh, I can eat half a container, but it's double the calories. They'll see that higher calorie content. Soda is another example. You know, a 20-ounce bottle of soda. How many people pour out 8 ounces out of a 20-ounce bottle? Not many people. Nobody that really I can think of. So, you know, 20 ounces is now technically 1 serving, but that's, you know, 240, 250 calories. So The hope is that people will see that and maybe reconsider their choice. So this is still what the food label looks like today. I see some of you with food, you can even flip over what you're eating and look at the label of what you're eating right now. But I've kind of outlined some key steps as what I think is important to follow when you're looking at a food label. It usually takes a little bit of practice if you're not real familiar with them. Maybe you've seen them a lot, but you haven't really paid much attention to the numbers and the nutrients that are there. But the first thing that's always important to look at is the serving size, because that's what's going to determine what the rest of the numbers truly mean. If you're looking at it and you don't disregard the serving size and you see calories as being 80 calories per serving, you're like, oh shoot, this isn't that many, I can just eat the whole bag. But maybe there's 4 servings in a bag. So serving size is the first thing to look at. The next thing is calories, and it kind of follows down the label as far as level of importance, I guess, if you will. Step 3, you want to look at all your macronutrients. So if fat is something you're really trying to watch in your diet, you'll want to look at the total fat, the saturated fat, the trans fat, and see how much is coming from each fat source. The key things to take away from that are you really want to limit saturated fat and trans fats. So if you're eating something and you notice that it has 20 grams of saturated fat, you might want to reconsider that choice. Or if you see something that even has 0.5 grams of trans fat, once again, you should probably reconsider that choice. Something that's really helpful to determine if it's too high or too low are these percentages in the right-hand column, percentage of your daily value. Those are based on a 2,000 calorie a day diet. Not that everyone needs to eat 2,000 calories a day, but it can at least give you a rough estimate or a reference point. So if your one item for one meal is, say, 70% of your calories from fat, that's quite a bit. You don't have much left for the day. You've only got 30% left. So, those can be good ways to just get a better idea without having to count grams or, keep a detailed food diary or anything like that. Sugar, once again, like with the proposed changes that they're wanting to make, the sugar that's listed now is not, it doesn't break out what's naturally occurring versus what's added. So just to be aware of that. The American Heart Association actually recommends women to limit their sugar intake to 6 teaspoons a day. That's only 100 calories from sugar. Men, it's 9 teaspoons a day. So if you think about like a bottle of soda, that's like 250% of your day's worth of sugar. So that's just to kind of give you a reference of how much added sugar.
Not just added sugar, like sugar, period.
Added sugar.
Okay.
Added sugar. So good question.
How does the like saccharin and stuff like that factor into that?
Artificial sweeteners don't factor into that. Those are something that there's a lot of research coming out now more about artificial sugars and how they can actually negatively impact health. It's all pretty inconclusive right now, but there's been studies done on people that consume high amounts of saccharin or aspartame, or something like some artificial sweetener, that they can actually be overweight, they can actually have higher risk of diabetes. So it's kind of a reverse effect of what we thought for so long.
What about the ones like Truvia? Is that, that's plant-based? How does that?
Right. That one they're not finding as much of a negative impact because it is more of a naturally occurring sweetener. It's still fairly new that they haven't done a ton of research on it, but from what I've found, it's pretty safe. So, but with anything, artificial or not, do your best to put the most natural foods into your body. If it's not natural or if it's something that's maybe more of a treat, just be moderate with it. So, and then the other key things to look at are fiber and protein. So those are 2 nutrients that are going to help keep you satisfied. So if you are, considering a breakfast choice, You want to try to find something that's got a decent amount of fiber. I always say try to find foods with at least 3 grams of fiber or more. Whole grain or cereals or breads or pastas, those type of foods that are higher in fiber, aim for at least 3 grams. And then protein as well. Protein is important to include with every single meal. So you want to make sure that you're getting an adequate source there. Excuse me. Next thing to look at would be sodium. This is oftentimes overlooked by a lot of people on the food label. Mostly I think because it doesn't provide caloric value. So a lot of people, when they think about their nutrition, they think about weight. That's typically what it is. Diet for other health conditions doesn't resonate as much as diet and weight. So sodium doesn't offer calories, but it does have a pretty significant impact on health. So a lot of processed foods, a lot of condiments, sauces, frozen meals, anything that comes from a box or a can typically is going to have a higher amount of sodium in it. So it's recommended that if you don't have high blood pressure, you should eat 2,300 milligrams or less a day of sodium. And then lastly, look at the ingredient list. So you've kind of skimmed the food label to see, okay, is this the right number of calories, or is it a good source of fiber or protein or whatever? Then you want to move to the ingredient list. And this is actually a really important part of the food label that not many people overlook. Because, for example, you'll be able to find things in the ingredient list that might not necessarily be telling in the label. So, for example, whole grains. If something says that it's a source of whole grains, you really have to look at the ingredient list to see, okay, is this high on the ingredient list, so it truly is a good source? Or is it really made with enriched flour and there's a few flecks of fiber added in later on down the road? So that's something to watch out for as an example when you're looking at ingredient lists. So like I mentioned, the daily values are based on a 2,000 calorie diet, so that's just kind of a reference point for you. And if it says that it's a good source of something, it has to have at least 10% of the daily value of that nutrient. So if it says that it's a good source of calcium, the daily value of that has to be at least 10% or higher. So this label up there would be a good source of calcium because it's got 20%. So I want to talk just a little bit more about the ingredient list, and I hope that you can kind of see up there at the top. But the first ingredient listed up there is whole oats. So the key word there is whole. Whether it's oats, whether it's wheat, whether it's corn, that will truly indicate if it's truly a whole grain and it's not been highly processed. Trans fat are another example of things to look for. So the food label, what we just looked at, if it says 0 grams trans fat, technically what that means is it can still have a ½ gram or less. Okay? So they round it down to 0. But if you look at the ingredient list, if it says partially hydrogenated or hydrogenated oil, that means that it's trans fat. So if you have heart disease, if you have high cholesterol, if you have heart disease in your family, you really want to avoid trans fat. So looking at the ingredient list is going to be really important for you. Sugar alcohols is another thing that's maybe listed in the ingredient list but not in the label. Sugar alcohols can actually cause a lot of GI problems if you have them in large quantities. And then it can also help you identify anything artificial, any preservatives, any flavorings, any dyes, things like that. Ingredients are listed in order by weight. So the first ingredient listed, it contains the most of that ingredient. An example with that, my husband went on a camping trip with him and some of his friends a few weeks ago. And some of them are still kind of living a bachelor life, so they're pretty tight with their money and they don't want to spend a lot of money on food. So they go to the grocery store, these two guys, the two bachelors, go to the grocery store and they come back to the house with sandwich stuff for lunches. And they bought this package of cheese that on the label it said 99 cents. And so my husband, being that he lives with me, a dietitian, he looked it over and he was looking. He found cheese to be like the 5th or 6th ingredient on the list. And I thought, So he chose not to put that on his sandwich. But I thought that was just really interesting. You know, you see it and it's like, oh, it's sandwich cheese, but then really it's, you know, all these binders and preservatives. Oh, and then they throw cheese in there. So that's just an example. And then also on the ingredient list is where you'll find any of the common allergens that are listed. So if you have a wheat allergy, if you have an egg allergy or soy, anything like that, that is a requirement that foods list if it contains, or if it's even processed in a facility that has one of those major allergens in it. So these are, I guess, some things I kind of already mentioned. You know, with health claims, these are just other things that can be found on a food package, whether it's in the label on the back or on the front of the package. You know, they can be good indicators of a product, but you really need to dig a little bit further to see if it truly fits into your meal plan. Doesn't necessarily mean that the product is healthy if it has one of these claims on the front. A good example is yogurt. You know, most of us think of yogurt as being a fairly healthy food, especially Greek yogurt. That's, you know, a real popular food right now. And a lot of yogurt, especially if it's flavored with fruit or some type of sweetener, has a lot of sugar in it. You know, you could have a yogurt, a little 5 or 6 ounce container of yogurt that has over 20 grams of sugar in it. You know, so if you're a diabetic and you're like, oh, I'm going to eat a yogurt, you know, it's got some protein in it, but really it's going to be like 2 servings of your carbohydrates for the day, you might reconsider it. But, you know, just looking at the front of the package, you might not realize that. Other things just to be aware of are some of those nutrient content claims that I mentioned. You know, so if it's light or if it's reduced, most oftentimes when something's taken out of a product, it's replaced with something else. So if it's sugar that's been taken out of a product, it's either added, you know, fat might be added, other carbohydrates, you know, whether it's more flour, salt. So they can't just keep taking stuff out of a product and expect to have something left. So that's something to keep in mind. If things are reduced or light, soy sauce is always the food that comes to mind when I talk about this, because even light soy sauce is still really high in sodium. You know, so if you have high blood pressure and you're really watching your sodium intake, make sure you look at the soy sauce label, because 1 tablespoon is a serving, which really isn't that much, and it still, you know, can be over 1/3 of your daily value of sodium. So that's just, you know, something to watch out for as well. Just because this says, oh, it's less sodium, it means I can eat it, maybe eat more of it. You still need to do a little bit of investigating. So just some key takeaways from food labels and really what to watch out for. You know, it really can be beneficial to try to gain more knowledge and understanding around food labels, just because it will help you ultimately make better choices. You know, if you know what's in your food, you know, if you're aware of what it's all going to do for you, you know, especially if you're following a specific eating plan, you know, maybe for a health condition or something like that, it really can help you make better choices. Looking at the ingredient list, you can kind of catch some of those sneaky things that are added, you know, the trans fats, the artificial dyes or flavors, things like that. And then it gives you the opportunity to really compare, you know, really make the best choice. So even if there's foods like hot dogs that are just your absolute favorite and you're not willing to give those up, if you're at least comparing, you can at least make a better choice. You know, I'm not here to tell you that you can't eat hot dogs or you can't eat soy sauce or you can't eat, you know, Greek yogurt. You know, I'm not here to tell you that. I don't think that should be a lifestyle for anybody. It's just giving you the information so you can make an informed decision and a good choice for your health. So those are just some key things to take away. Maybe next time you go to the grocery store, you'll be a little more of an investigator and check out something like this. So now we're going to kind of shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit about activity and setting some goals around daily activity. So why do physical activity? Some of the benefits I think are fairly obvious for people, but some maybe are not as obvious. You know, it really has been shown to decrease risk of chronic disease, inflammation, decrease that. It really can improve mood. It's been shown to decrease symptoms of depression and anxiety, even stress reduction. I know a lot of people in their work life are so stressed and so overwhelmed, and I always tell people, just get up and take 5 minutes. Go for a walk. Go get outside in fresh air and walk around the block. And, so many people think that they don't have time, but really you can actually be more productive if you take more of those frequent breaks throughout the day and get up and move your body a little bit to help actually be more productive, be less stressed, and get more done. More energy, better sleep as you age can actually help reduce some of the cognitive decline that we experience as we age. Lowers your risk for osteoporosis. So if you're doing anything that's weight bearing, even walking, your own body weight is putting pressure on your joints and your bones. It's really actually strengthening your bones as you do that exercise. So especially for women, it's important, to do any weight bearing exercise because we're at higher risk of osteoporosis. And then, I think a lot of people, when they think of exercise, they think of it as a way to manage or lose weight. And that is one benefit, but as you can see, there's plenty of others that are important for your body when you do physical activity. So I always challenge people when they think about exercise or activity to just think about it as doing something else for your body. Or maybe something in addition to, if it's managing your weight that you're really trying to accomplish. What else is kind of in that big picture for you? Sure, weight is important, but what does that really mean? We're going to talk a little bit more about that. Does anybody have any questions so far? I feel like I've been throwing a lot of information at everybody, and it's time to check on questions. So, good? Okay. Okay, so what's recommended for most adults is to actually get at least 30 minutes, 5 days a week of moderate activity. If you can't get 30 minutes in every day, you can lump it together in 3 or 4 days a week. You can even break that 30 minutes up into 3 10-minute increments. So if your schedule doesn't really allow you to just go and spend a bunch of time at the gym or get out and go take an hour walk, you can break it up. So if you do 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes at lunch, 10 minutes at night, you're covered. Excuse me. And that can be just as beneficial as if you went and spent 30 minutes or an hour in the gym or doing some other type of working out. If you don't want to invest that much time, which, in the grand scheme of things, I don't think 30 minutes a day is too unreasonable. If you'd rather do it in less time, you can do more vigorous exercise and get 75 minutes a week. So if you like to get in, get your workout done, push your limits, and that works for you, then that's great. So it truly is best, though, to try to get at least some type of physical activity every, at least 3 days out of the week or more if you can. Muscle strengthening activity is also important, so any type of resistance exercise, whether that's lifting weights, doing body weight exercises like push-ups, squats, stuff that you don't have to have equipment, that's certainly okay too. You can do lunges. Do lunges down the hall as you're walking to the elevator. That's considered strengthening exercise. I know I saw a lady just last night when I was driving home. She was lunging down the sidewalk. I thought, why not? Go out for a walk and intermix some strengthening exercises. So,
What would we consider moderate versus vigorous?
moderate's going to be like brisk walking, maybe more of a leisurely to moderate bike ride. Something where you're going to get your heart rate up and maybe still be able to carry on a conversation. Whereas vigorous is you're going to be breathing really hard, sprinting, faster jogging, more breaking a sweat, definitely. Circuit training, anything like that that's going to be pretty high intensity. So yeah, even getting out and taking a walk, a brisker walk, not just where you're kind of lollygagging down the road, but something that's going to at least get your heart rate up would be moderate. So just some ideas, if you are struggling with getting that amount of exercise in your day, here's just some things to think about. Like I said before, take it 10 minutes at a time. Don't look at that 2.5 hours a week and think, where am I gonna find that time in my schedule? Break it up, do 10-minute increments if that's gonna work better for you. You have a great on-site fitness center here that I had the opportunity to see a couple weeks ago. And so that can be a great opportunity. And is it open all the time, or are there only certain hours?
It's open all the time.
All the time, weekends too? Is it weekends? Okay. So, and is it free, or do you have to pay for it? Okay.
It's free.
So, I mean, that's a huge benefit. You know, not many employers offer a free on-site fitness center that's open anytime, any day of the week. Try to be active with somebody else. I always find that this is, it makes it much easier to be accountable to somebody. You know, if you are driving home and you're like, oh, I really don't want to stop at the gym. If you were meeting somebody there to work out with, it makes it that much easier. Or maybe it's somebody on your team, or, you know, that sits in your area, you know, that you can go down over lunch or after work or something like that. Or it's just somebody to get up and go take a 10-minute walk with over lunch. That can be really helpful. And just remember that slow and steady wins the race. You know, you don't have to go from 0 to 30 minutes 5 days a week in a week. You know, by no means is that the expectation. If it's a matter of starting out with 10 minutes every day, 10 minutes 3 days a week, and then kind of building up from there, you know, that's perfectly fine. It's really where you are now and what's going to be most doable for you. And the progression will come. I often find that healthy habits kind of spread like wildfire a little bit. Once you kind of get started and you kind of get over that hump of, oh, this is a chore. You know, it's a chore to exercise. It's a chore to eat healthy. Once you kind of get over that hump, typically it maybe lasts 2 or 3 weeks for most people. But once you kind of get past that, you can kind of hit a stride. And then you find that you want to work out more. You want to, instead of doing just 30 minutes, you want to do 45. So it can really be a good thing just once you kind of get into that stride. Some other things to think about. You know, exercise doesn't always have to be structured. It doesn't have to be a dedicated 30 minutes, go to the gym, break a sweat, change, shower, get back to work kind of thing. Non-structured forms of exercise or movement would be things like park a little bit further away from the door than you typically do. You know, most people are inclined to just find the first spot that's available. Make it a point to find the last spot that you can. Take the stairs. You know, if it's a couple flights that's manageable, you know, you're not going to be sweating by the time you get to your desk, do it. You know, that can be good ways. Those can be good ways to get in little exercise tidbits throughout the day that can be a bit more manageable. Decrease your time spent sitting. So I think J.P. Dunn's probably a fairly similar environment to Cerner, where people sit at their desk all day, right? So get up, move around. I know a guy on our team has actually rigged up a standing desk for himself, so he stands a lot of the day. You know, so trying to get creative, or at least just taking free breaks so you're not just sitting for hours at a time. You know, they're doing more and more studies now that they're showing sitting is like you're just slowly killing yourself, because sitting is so harmful to your body when you do it for extended amounts of time that it's really taking years off your life when you just sit all day long. Using a pedometer or Fitbit can be a good way to kind of track how you're doing. You know, a steps tracker. I know I got one fairly recently, and it really is pretty motivating. You know, when I'm sitting at my desk and I look down and this red line is blinking at me, I'm like, I gotta get up and like just go for a quick 5-minute walk or something. So it can be a good way to just keep you more on top of it, keep you thinking about it more often. And just lastly, something is always better than nothing. You know, that 5-minute walk is gonna be more beneficial for you than if you didn't take it. So even though it doesn't seem like that much at the time, it's still putting you one step closer to success. So when if you're ready, or if you're not, you know, you want to think about setting a goal for yourself, whether that's with exercise, nutrition, anything in your life that you're wanting to accomplish or set a goal with. You want to consider where you are kind of in this spectrum of change. Has anybody seen this before? The stages of change? No. Well, there's 5 stages stages of change. You know, kind of on this end of the spectrum, it's you're not ready to change, you haven't even thought about making a change. Whereas on this end of the spectrum, it's the maintenance phase of where you're doing it, it's your lifestyle, you don't look back kind of thing. So you kind of have to determine where you are on that spectrum. You know, if you're in the pre-contemplation, where it's like, I don't even think I need to change, my life is fine, I don't want to do anything. You know, maybe you in a few months or maybe after you meet with your doctor next, you might reconsider that. So be thinking about where you are on that spectrum of what you can do to kind of move yourself into the next phase. Typical roadblocks, or sometimes I like to call them excuses, for eating better or getting more activity that a lot of people face are, you know, their work life. They're too busy. They don't have time. Their family life. You know, I've got 3 kids. They all have different schedules. I'm trying to get them here, there, and everywhere. Finances. You know, I can't afford a gym membership. You know, I can't afford workout equipment. Stress, time constraints, traveling. You know, I'm always traveling with my job. I don't have access to a gym. Or just purely lack of motivation. And exercise or activity is one of those things that if you continue to not do it, you're just kind of digging yourself into a hole that's getting you further and further away from being motivated. It's because you're tired, you feel like you can't do it, and so you don't do it, and then you just kind of go further and further and further. So it's kind of taking that initial step that can kind of start, you know, moving you out of that hole, if you will. So if you can identify with one of these challenges up here, these roadblocks, my challenge to you is think about, okay, what's one small thing I can do to overcome it? You know, if it's finances, oh, I can't afford a gym membership, I'm just going to start using the gym here. Or if it's family life, you know, maybe your schedule's crazy. Okay, well, we're going to take, you know, 10 minutes, just starting out one day out of the weekend to take a walk as a family. You know, so just one little thing. It doesn't have to be a major life overhaul, but just one little thing that can help you overcome that roadblock. So then you have to think about, why is this important to me? Yeah, sure, today it's going to make me feel better. I'm going to be less stressed. I'm going to have a little bit more energy. You know, I'm going to get to do something with my family or whatever it is. But what is that going to lead up to that's really important to you? You know, why do you want to be more active? Why do you want to eat better? You know, why do you want to be healthy? So I like to think of it as, what is your it? What is it that's really driving you? You know, and for some people it takes a little bit of thought and time to really figure this out. You know, I've talked to people before that their it is they want to live longer so they can see their kids grow up. You know, or they just want to have enough energy so they can get through their day and have a better relationship with their spouse in the evenings. They don't want to be grouchy and tired when they get home. So you really have to think about what's kind of that big ultimate goal that you're trying to accomplish with living a healthier lifestyle. Then you have to connect that with your day-to-day actions. So if it's a picture of your family that you set on your desk as just kind of a reminder. I had one lady once that her family would take, you know, a trip every couple years to Disneyland. They'd take her kids there. And so she really wanted to be healthy so she could keep doing those vacations. So she had some watch with like Mickey Mouse on it or something that she wore every day. And that was her reminder of, okay, even though I'm tired, I feel really overwhelmed, I'm still going to get up and go take this walk, or I'm going to, you know, go to the gym or whatever it was. So just some other examples of some big picture visions that you might have. You know, if it's just your health, you know, you want to live a longer life, a better life, confidence, commitment to your family, preventing disease. If you have a specific fitness goal, you know, some people want to do it to run a marathon or do a triathlon or something like that. Or if it's just overall energy and endurance to get through your day. You know, you feel like you maybe could do a better job at work or at home, and you just want to achieve that. Excuse me. So when you are thinking about setting out to make a goal around activity, you always want to try to have some type of a SMART goal. And SMART stands for these things. SMART with it being very specific. So just saying that you want to be more active is not a SMART goal because it's not specific. What type of activity do you want to do? How often are you going to do it? Are you going to do it with somebody? Where are you going to do it? What time of the day are you going to do it? So you want to try to be as specific as you can. I find that the more ambiguous people are with their goals, the less likely they are to follow them. Because if you don't know the days you're going to do it, or the time of day, or the type that you're going to do, people always say, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. I didn't have time today, I'll do it tomorrow. So it can just be pushed off and pushed off. So you have to be very specific. You want it to be measurable. So how are you going to measure this success? Are you going to keep an exercise or an activity log? So every day, if it's your goal to take 10 minutes over your lunch hour and take a walk, are you going to put a check mark on your calendar every day that you do it? How are you going to measure your goal? Maybe you want to train for a race. So your goal is, if I finish this 5K, or if I finish this marathon or half marathon, maybe that's your measurement. It's achievable. So is it realistic for you? For me, setting a goal to run a marathon is not achievable. Like I have no desire, I don't think physically I would be ever able to do that, so I don't even want to set that as a goal. Unrealistic is another one. That's not realistic for me. That's not something that is important to me, no desire to do it. And then on a timeline. So you have to set an end date. When is your deadline? When are you going to have this accomplished by? And cut yourself some slack. Don't think that you have to leave today and, okay, I'm going to run my first 5K ever this Saturday. Give yourself, enough time to have accomplished it and feel good about it so you can kind of continue to build from there. Okay, so with that, does anybody have any questions, or have you been thinking about maybe an activity goal that you are wanting to set for yourself, or something that maybe you can even do today yet to be a little more active, whether that's, after we're done here, maybe you just take a walk around the block really quick. Or maybe it's taking the stairs back up to your desk instead of the elevator. Little things like that can really add up to make a big difference. So.
I walk every morning, and I do map my walk app.
Oh, yeah.
And then you can see over time, this is how many I did for this day, and I've been doing it since, it's not a great big, I've been doing it since April, and I'm like close to 250 miles.
Oh my gosh,
That's great.
That's good.
Yeah. But it's not more than a mile and a half, 2 miles, maybe 3 miles a day, but
Okay, but that's
it's still.
significant, yeah. So do you find that to be motivating, where you see?
Yeah, when you can go back and look at it and say, this is what I've done, and
Sure.
so,
And it's called Map My Walk.
at my walk.
Okay.
So,
HHS.gov has a walk across America, so you can pick a state, and then it tells you what the distance is. So when you track what you're walking, you can see if you made it across that state or how. So depending on the width of the state you pick,
Sure. If you're gonna walk across Texas.
or if you're going to walk, if you want to walk all 50 states or whatever.
When I
It's-
worked for a previous employer, we did a promotional thing where we walked the Oregon Trail as a group.
Cool.
Oh,
We tracked each team across
Uh-huh.
the Oregon Trail.
Oh my gosh, what a hike that was.
Well, and the thing is we added as a team, we
Right.
add our miles together.
Yes.
It's really cool.
we had a girl in our group that set her phone, the timer on her
Oh,
phone, so
yeah.
it went off every hour. And so every hour when that went off, we'd stand up and do lunges, or we'd do something for just a few minutes and then sit back down. And she went on vacation, and she must have turned it off, because when she came back, all of a sudden it was like, we're not doing this anymore. We
Yeah.
need to get back in. So you miss it.
I know, you do. And yeah, even just those couple minutes, if it's 5 minutes, really can make a big difference. I find that just doing that, it's like I sit down and I'm a little more focused, and the next hour rolls around and it's time to refocus.
I'm thinking of what I want to do. I'm not doing much of anything right now.
I can't imagine why.
Walking at night. But I've always just kind of played sports, so I've played, different activities on Tuesdays and Thursdays and Saturdays for like ever. So I haven't been able to do those because I'm not like a gym person. I'm bored out of my mind in the gym, so. But this will honestly be the first time I've ever really like tried to lose weight, so I'm just, I mean, I'm going in like not knowing what, be doing. So that was helpful to me to, that last bit, especially the SMART, to make like a clear plan of, of action and.
And if it helps to
Or
write it out,
something helpful, yeah.
write S, okay, what are the specifics? M, how am I gonna measure it?
Right.
A trick for that, well, in just any exercise plan, whether it's you're trying to lose weight or, do something else, is make sure you find activity that you really enjoy. Don't feel like you have to go to the gym in order to get a decent workout in.
Right.
You have to do something that you truly enjoy, otherwise it's not gonna last. Because if you forced yourself to go to the gym every day and you hate it, you're probably gonna last maybe a couple of weeks, and then you're probably like, nah, I'm done with this.
Right.
Just because it's not enjoyable. So if it's walking that you find enjoyable, if it's swimming, biking, playing sports, do that kind of stuff. Walking the mall, a lot of people just go to the mall and walk around, so. All right, any other questions or anything? All right. Well,
Thank you
thank you
so
guys very
much.
much for coming and your attention. So have a great rest of your